Introduction of new plan social worker. Jose, I believe you're just saying that.
I am new. My name is Jose Gomez. I live in Albemarle County. I've been here since 1992. I live in the Forest Lakes area. That's the Banner District. You need any more information or? I'm glad. Okay, very good. Thank you all. Thank you.
All right, matters from the public.
Oh, is it all right if we just go around and everyone introduce themselves so that, because I think, well, actually Peter's not here yet, but just for the new folks, oh, are you Peter?
Yep.
Okay, then that's perfect, but just for the new folks, including myself, if that's all right, do you mind?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so we start with Jose and then.
You want to lead off?
Oh, sure, yeah, that makes the most sense. I'm Lori Jean Touloon. I am the Regional Housing and Community Development Grants Manager here. So I'm just filling in temporarily in this role of just helping facilitate these meetings, but I'm delighted to meet all of you.
Christine Jacobs, Executive Director here. Happy to be with you guys. Come into CTAC on and off as my schedule allows with the committees, but really happy to have two new members and to engage with them.
Peter Thompson, representing Albemarle County.
Greg Weaver, Charlottesville City.
Lee Condor representing Albemarle County. Matt Healy representing City.
Chapman Munn, representing the MPO.
And I'm Sarah Medley representing the city.
And introduce yourself.
I'm Nathan Moore, I'm on County.
Wonderful. So thanks.
All right.
And we'll just move briefly to those on Zoom. If you would just introduce yourself. We'll start with Ethan.
Can you hear us, Ethan?
I think Ethan had to step away for a moment, and that's what he said in the chat.
Oh, thank you, you're right, that is in the chat. Okay, we'll come back then. And then Alan will speak
Yeah, go
today.
ahead, Alan.
Yeah, hey, I'm Alan Simpson. I'm with EPR PC based out of Charlottesville. I'm down in Richmond though. It's my first time joining one of these meetings, so I'm happy to be here. We've been helping the TJPDC with the long range transportation plan, and that's what I'll be talking about today. So happy to be here.
All right. All right, members or any matters from the public?
Can I speak now?
Sure.
If I have a public matter. I live over on Blenheim Avenue in Belmont, which connects to X Park. And every Saturday morning, the traffic on Blenheim on the 600 block is atrocious and dangerous. There's no sidewalks at all on Blenheim. And so there's often like families and people walking down the street while cars are driving, sometimes at 35, 40 miles an hour down the street into the parking lot of X, which is, if anyone's been down there, is completely overcrowded and disastrous. And like several of my neighbors have also commented on this, and we want to like figure out a way to move this forward to get some more like speed humps or sidewalks installed, so that it's a safer. Yeah.
Have you taken this to the city at all?
Yeah, I think one of my neighbors has, but I thought I would bring it up here too.
Well, they have been, at least from what I've read, have been making an effort to try to fill in sidewalk gaps.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I guess it's potential of safe streets for all kind of projects too. But yeah, I think the city can probably
Yeah.
run with this more than the MPO can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, so like,
Yeah,
put it
no
on record.
problem. Anything else? If not, then we'll move on to approval of the minutes from the last meeting. I know two of you weren't here for that, but they looked okay to me, but does anyone have any changes that they? Sure.
Never. Yeah, that'd be good.
Need a couple minutes, but thanks, so, do I have a motion to approve the minutes as a?
And also, so
We have a second,
Second.
moved and seconded, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, motion carries. Smart scale alternatives, so you say Chuck is gonna be late, so we're gonna move on to moving towards 25th. So Alan, I guess you're up.
Yep, let me share my screen here and make sure everything's working properly. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. Again, my name is Alan. I'm with EPR PC based out of Charlottesville. And we have been working with the TJPDC to get the long range transportation plan done. And what I'm going to do today is present feedback that we've heard over the last month from a series of stakeholder meetings, as well as an open house event we had earlier this month. And I'm going to present the latest list of infrastructure priority projects. So the goal of this is just to kind of share what we've heard so far and share the latest list of projects with you all. And in your packets, you should have a list of those projects and a list of brief descriptions of each project. The descriptions are not going to be on the slides, so just refer to that packet if you need more information about each project. And you might note when you look in your packet, the list of projects and the descriptions, it's not in the same order as this presentation. Apologize for that. That was taken from one of the posters from the open house event. So these projects, when I get to them, they're not in any particular order. They're not organized by priority or anything. But yeah, so I'll get into it now. So if the PowerPoint goes, there we go. So our agenda today is to talk about the stakeholder meeting and open house, an update on the priority projects, give you a summary of the feedback that we heard from those events, and open it up for questions and discussion if there are any questions. So we had 3 stakeholder meetings this month. Starting on the 1st, we had a business stakeholder meeting, we had a public safety stakeholder meeting, and a community partners stakeholder meeting. Each meeting had 4 attendees, and we had attendees from a range of organizations around Albemarle and Charlottesville, from the county, UVA, Visit Charlottesville, Blue Ridge Health Department, Albemarle County Police and Fire, CAT, Southern Environmental Law Center, Three Knots Trail, Piedmont Environmental Council, and the CAA. And so we had 4 attendees each for those meetings. They were about an hour and a half long each, and we presented the list of priority projects to them, and we're looking for their feedback. And on Thursday, March 7th, we had an open house event in the TJPDC lobby. We had 9 attendees to that one, and we received 1 comment card. So the objective of the stakeholder meeting in the open house, we were aiming to validate the proposed list of priority projects, engage general agreement with the plan's recommendations thus far. We asked stakeholders to give feedback on how they would prioritize the proposed projects to influence the constrained list. We have our own priority level set to each project that we came up with through a data analysis process where basically we analyzed the road network of the MPO, and we applied different metrics to it. I'm not sure if this has been talked about in previous meetings because I haven't been there before, but basically EPR did data analysis on the MPO's road network. We looked at things like pedestrian safety, bike and walk access, crashes, congestion, and basically put all that data together, made a map of the MPO's road network, and each road segment was graded on from high to low need, basically what needs to be improved on each road segment. So each project that I'm going to go through, the first line is going to say what we determined or what the process determined the priority level to be, and then we wanted to see how if there was agreement with that, if there was disagreement, because it's just one part of the puzzle. We don't want to that doesn't speak to that's not the last word on the priority for each project. So just want to preface that. And then we were also looking for details. any comments that helped guide the project details and inform VDOT designs to feed into funding applications. Some of these projects are in, they're kind of vague, or they might not have any specific recommendations. So we just want to get feedback that would help influence that. So just a quick recap of the priority project identification process. Again, if this has already been discussed in previous meetings, I apologize. I just wanted to kind of give a primer. So we came up with a list of candidate projects based on improvements identified through previous planning efforts. So small area plans, corridor studies, transit strategic plans, regional plans, and project pipeline and star studies. And let's see. Priority projects were identified based on locally identified priority improvements, and then the needs identification process that I just mentioned, the kind of data intensive process that we undertook. So we looked to see what projects were out there that have been proposed or in early stages or just are out there or have been recently committed. And then we looked at the road network and the priority by priority level, and we looked to see what projects are already in place that will address those needs, and which ones are the highest priority based on those metrics that I mentioned. And then any needs that weren't addressed by a committed or recently implemented project or one of the priority projects we're going to go through, we indicated those as planning priorities. So those are things that we need to look at over the next several years. So we started with what's out there already, and these priority projects are going to be things that need to get done in the immediate future in the next few years. And next slide, there we go. So here's the list of projects. Again, you should have it in your packet. And I'm going to go through them one by one and just talk about the feedback that we heard from each project. So each slide is going to have a vicinity map that shows the location of each project. It's going to show the priority level that was identified in our prioritization process. And then it's going to show what feedback we heard from stakeholders and, if applicable, the open house. Again, so you'll see when I go through these, the needs prioritization process, there were some that were, you'll see quite a few that actually said low priority. That's just relative to the entire road network. So we have a handful that were high priority, a couple of medium priority, and a few that were identified as low priority, which doesn't mean they're not important, but just relative to the entire road network, they were mentioned as low. So I just want to preface it with that. So I'm going to start going through the projects now. So the first one is the I-64 and 5th Street interchange improvement. The prioritization process found that as a low need, relatively speaking. And in some of these meetings, we didn't hear much feedback about some of the projects. Some groups felt more strongly than others. So you'll see NA a few times here. But public stakeholders graded this as a high priority. Community partners, it was a low priority, so they agreed with the rating that we had. So this project, general comments there were, it would improve pedestrian and bicyclist safety at this interchange and enhance access to outdoor recreation at Biscuit Run Park in the future. We heard comments that a transportation hub is needed here. We had one stakeholder who was against the idea of a diverging diamond design here. And we had a comment that the entire corridor needs to be addressed and not just this interchange. So that's the feedback we heard in the stakeholder meetings on this project. I can, if anyone has questions as I'm going through, please feel free. I'm going to move on through, and we can discuss at the end if there are no questions as I go through. So the Rio Road peanut-shaped roundabout and shared use path. So that's here, the intersection of Rio and Hillsdale and Old Brook Road and Northfield Road. We identified that as a high/medium priority based on the metrics that we looked at. And that was the public safety stakeholders, interestingly, didn't have a lot to say about that one. They didn't find it a high priority, but the community partners definitely did. And so the business stakeholder group didn't really give us a priority level on that one, but they did feel that speed was a concern on this corridor and that there's a need for safety improvements. Our community partners were very concerned about safety concerns and deaths at this intersection and a lot of issues with biking safely along the Rio Road corridor. Interestingly, the public safety stakeholders didn't feel that there were many issues here, I guess, compared to other parts of the road network. this didn't seem like a high priority, but it definitely did for our community partners.
That is puzzling, given that that's supposedly the most dangerous intersection in the state.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, it's it's a small sample of a four-person stakeholder group, but I guess to them, maybe it's not something that they used often or weren't that familiar with, but yeah, I agree. It definitely seems like a problem area. Airport Road and 29, so intersection improvements there, identified as relatively speaking a low priority. Business stakeholders said that was a high priority. The other two groups didn't have a lot to say in terms of the priority level. They agreed with what we had in general. So general comments, I think a lot of us know it's difficult to cross 29 as a pedestrian under current conditions, and with density increasing there in the future with more development, I mean, that's going to become even more important. So just a general support for improvements at this intersection. Our public safety stakeholders prefer to see things like stoplight timing improvements, sidewalks and crosswalks, rather than a big capital investment like a roundabout. So that's something to consider. The Ivy Road corridor, this is a long stretch, and the overall need was low for our prioritization process, excuse me. But the stakeholder groups thought this was a much higher priority in general. Business stakeholder groups were kind of looking at it from a business standpoint, or we asked them to. So they said it would be essential for tourism coming in and out of the city and to the county there. Our public safety stakeholders, especially fire and rescue, mentioned flooding and congestion issues along this route. And our community partners were definitely interested in a shared use path along Old Ivy Road to improve walkability. The US 250 corridor out in Crozet, we're looking at where 250 passes by Henley Middle and Brownsville Elementary. Our public safety stakeholders thought this was a high priority. They definitely thought it was a higher priority than what was identified in the data gathering process. Pedestrian access at Brownsville Elementary and Henley Middle was cited as a challenge. They're saying that sidewalk access on nearby roads is inconsistent. They stop and start kind of random places, not so easy to get to on foot. There was mention of a potential roundabout design. There was some concern that could be confusing for bus pickup and drop off. So, Avon Street Extended and Mill Creek Drive, intersection improvements identified there. That one didn't get a lot of feedback in terms of the priority level from our stakeholder groups. They generally agreed that it wasn't the highest priority. Mentioned that it could be a good place for a roundabout. And the business stakeholders felt that it could be a good future thoroughfare for Biscuit Run Park. For the Old Lynchburg Road shared use path, again, this one didn't get a ton of feedback. Low priority in general from our identification process, but still something that needs to get done. The representative from CAT cited a need for a light or a roundabout at this intersection, which is kind of related, but we're looking at a shared use path here more than anything else. Berkmar Drive shared use path. This one, no strong opinions really. It wasn't the highest priority out of what we showed everyone. And the Eastern Avenue connection out in Crozet, this is going to extend Eastern Avenue to its 250. It doesn't have an identified need because the road doesn't exist yet, and we're looking at the existing road network when we did that process, so there was no need identified with it. In general, people agreed that it's something that should happen, but not a high priority. I'm sorry?
Oh, I said, didn't talk to anybody in Crozet. They always complain about it.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting to see the different responses from different groups for sure. But the stakeholder groups didn't have a lot to say about that one. So for the Barracks Road corridor, that one, the needs identification process didn't identify it as the highest priority, but it definitely was something that the stakeholder groups thought should be higher. So high, medium priority. It's a high priority area for pedestrian and bicyclist safety, as well as traffic congestion. This intersection here, Ridge, McIntyre, West Main, South Water Street. We identified that one as a medium priority. The business stakeholders agreed, it was general agreement with that priority level. Comments on that one were that it's unsafe for visitors and residents alike. Equity needs to be consideration with these improvements. This area serves a lot of people living in low income housing. One stakeholder mentioned the need to implement the Ridge McIntyre Streetscapes plan. Another comment we got was someone suggested closing off South Street to vehicle traffic, but there were some concerns that access to Midway Manor would be impacted if that were to happen. So definitely something that was agreed upon as a medium priority. The Ryer Road corridor, improvements there between Huntington Road and Greenbrier Terrace. That's one that was flagged as a medium priority, and business stakeholders felt it should be a little bit higher, but they didn't have a lot of details on that one. They just said that seems more important to us. For the Fifth Street multimodal improvements, you'll see 3 need categories there. That's because when the data analysis process, it looked at each individual road segment. So there were some road segments that were high need based on congestion, public safety, pedestrian safety, that kind of thing, and some were less so. But in general, it's a high priority corridor. Business stakeholders definitely agreed. The other groups didn't have a lot of feedback on that one, but comment that the multimodal improvements are important, but it needs to happen in conjunction with improvements to the entire corridor as a whole. Our representative from CAT said that they would like to see a bus lane on this corridor, especially going south. For Preston Avenue multimodal improvements, that's one that was identified as a high, medium need, depending on the road segment. So overall, a high need. There was agreement with that from the stakeholder groups, at least the business stakeholder groups. Just to comment that the 10th Street intersection is confusing. The Hillsdale South extension, that one was identified as a high need, and there was agreement from the business stakeholders. You're seeing a lot of NAs on this list. Some of these groups, we honestly ran out of time to talk about everything, and at a certain point we had to ask, take a look through the list. If there's anything that jumps out at you or that you want to discuss before our meeting's over, we'll do that. So some groups didn't get through the entire list in the meeting, and we didn't hear much feedback from them afterwards. So there were some projects that didn't get a lot of feedback, but didn't have any other comments on that one, just some agreement that is a high need. And Peter Jefferson Parkway and Rolcon Road access management and pedestrian improvements. That was a medium need from the prioritization process. The business stakeholder group thought it would be a higher priority. In general, there weren't a lot of comments, just something that needs to happen. And finally, I think this is the last one. The Ravenna River bicycle and pedestrian bridge between Pantops and Woolen Mills. That one was identified as a medium need, basically based on the congestion at Free Bridge. And this is something that was suggested as a way to improve multimodal connectivity in that area, and hopefully relieve some congestion in that way, but also just a way to connect those 2 areas. Didn't have a lot of comments on this one. Not a lot of disagreement, but not a lot of strong opinions. So other feedback that we received, just to share it, we did get one comment card from the open house event. That comment said that the city's plans for West Main Street are an interim stage, but there's no long-term project identified in the long-range plan. And they would like to see vision projects that are more visionary. I believe you all have the vision list in your packet as well. That's for long-term, long-range projects, not the ones that we're identifying as priority projects for the immediate future. So that's what they're referring to there, but general support for what was presented. On the project website, we received a couple of comments. A comment that the draft priority list lacks detail on the planning priorities, which I mentioned earlier, which are needs that aren't being met by any project that's out there right now. So they're interested in learning a little bit more about those, and they would like to see them studied very soon. We did get a comment about the 2050 level of service, which is one of the metrics that we used in our needs identification process. This comment, they were saying that it wasn't a great way of representing conditions in urban areas, which is, it's a fair point. I will say that the process that we went through to identify needs in the road network, congestion wasn't the biggest component. It was actually one of the smallest components because the goal of this plan, the focus is more on pedestrian safety, safety in general, and accessibility, multimodal accessibility over congestion. So level of service, we included that as one of the considerations, but it wasn't the most important consideration. And then there was just a comment about appreciating the forum to talk about this thing. The next steps, so we're going to finalize the priority list using stakeholder and public feedback, develop implementation strategies, review of the final plan, and then the long-range transportation plan will be adopted in May. So moving right along there. So that's the feedback of what we heard. Excuse me, that's a summary of the feedback that we heard in the past month. Happy to answer any questions, or if anyone wanted to talk about any projects in particular. Yeah, thank you.
Any comments from the board?
It didn't seem like there was a lot of public feedback on this presentation that you did, but am I right in understanding that a lot of the prioritization of these projects was from like public engagement sessions previously?
Yeah,
Okay.
and so the priority level that I mentioned, that's just from that data intensive process that we did, where we looked at the road network. And then we also made a heat map of public comments that we received, and we received a lot of them. And so that was also a factor. That wasn't a factor in the priority level, because that was just from the data process, but that combined with what we heard from public feedback influenced the creation of the priority project list.
And then how are you going to use the stakeholder prioritization in the next round? Like, how are you going to incorporate that when so many were NAs?
That's a good question. Christine, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think it's, the way that we think of it is one small piece of a very large puzzle, right? This was 30 days of engaging stakeholder committees. It's not comprehensive. It is not, representative of the community. Like you said, how many people from Crozet filled out a survey? I think it's important to note as a part of our process, but I don't think it determines the priority level. It just notes what the feedback is that we received.
Okay.
I think it's interesting that some of the things on the priority list are already approved projects, like Fifth Street Extended and Old Lynchburg Road. I mean, there's already a project to put in a roundabout at that intersection, I believe. Of course, VDOT's selected Barracks Road as one of their things to focus on for round 6. Smart scale funding, perhaps a bit too ambitious in what they've got envisioned, but at the very least, making the off-ramp, the eastbound off-ramp off of the bypass to Barracks Road with 2 lanes wide instead of 1 would certainly mitigate most of the problems there. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting that the feedback that you got from those 3 groups didn't really amount to much.
And to your point, sorry, Alan, a lot of the,
No, go ahead.
It's that those projects, even if they're in planning stages now and an application stage now, it's really important that they show up in the long-range transportation plan. Should they not be funded in this current round of smart scale, we want to be able to still identify that they're priorities so we can continue to seek opportunities to implement projects.
So I think the Barracks Road goes all the way to Georgetown Road here. I don't think the current, at least when I looked at the Barracks Road plans, it's more on the intersection.
Right.
You'll hear more about that from Chuck tonight. He's going to go through it.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'll say is there were a couple of instances where we did run out of time to talk about everything, and we made sure to let everyone know if they if they did have further comments to, shoot us an email or leave a comment. We didn't receive any further feedback. But yeah, there were a couple of meetings where we went a little, it took a little time to get through all the projects. So,
Okay,
Well, many of these projects in and of themselves, you could spend 20-30 minutes talking about.
yes.
individual projects.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot to them.
All right, any other comments? If not, I guess we'll move on to the Unified Planning Work Program unless Chuck is available now.
Yes.
Chuck is available now.
Oh,
Okay, then
yeah,
we'll
he's online.
go back to smart scale.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Chuck, do you want us to share your presentation and advance slides, or would you like to share your screen?
And I don't have them opened up and you guys have it there. It'd be easier on the bandwidth to do it this way. Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry I'm late. Had to drive back from the MPO offices this evening, so it was a trek to get back here and still make it in time. So, are you going to show the Barracks Road presentation first?
Yeah, we are. Sorry, give us a second. I can pull it up on mine and share it because I've joined the meeting from my computer. Then you won't have to go through the licensure of.
I can get started on the Barracks Road. We just received the public feedback back last week from the public survey. So what I tried to do was look at what we had proposed, and based on the public feedback and in discussions with the staff and the MPO and the county staff, I basically pulled out the preferred solutions that had the most public buy-in and consolidated them into one slide deck for all the various locations. I'm not going to go through all of the various alternatives, but I'm just going to present this and give you the information on how well these did from the public survey standpoint. All right, next slide. Okay, this is the first portion, and this is the western section from the interchange west to Georgetown Road. And this is also the location that the county's looking to submit for their smart scale application this round. It includes a roundabout conversion at Georgetown Road with crosswalks on all four approaches. It also has an access management component along Georgetown Road that basically closes the median and narrows it to 4 feet and shifts the eastbound lanes to the median. And that's going to give us enough room on the outside to put a shared use path along the whole length of that section of road. And the next.
Yeah, is the shared use path.
Would that be separated from the main corridor?
Chuck, did you hear her? Would the path be separated from the main corridor?
You'll have an offset, probably 4 feet, because we're basically going to shift the road over approximately 12 feet, and that's going to give us 12 feet of space to put in a buffer and a 8-foot shared use path.
Excellent.
So we're trying to do that so we don't impact the right of way. A lot of those houses along that frontage are real close to the road and they're set down from the road. So if we have to go wider and get right of way, we're going to impact a lot of residencies along that road. And we're trying to limit that as much as possible. The next slide is how these fared from a smart scale application, from a public survey application. Can you forward the slide?
Sure can.
There we go. Okay. Georgetown basically had 1,400 responses, and we had 66 other respondents were in favor of the roundabout at Georgetown Road. Of the 1,400 respondents, we had 618 written comments that were also included, and a lot of those were negative. But if you look at the percentage, it correlates based on the number of written comments to the percentage of negative people that were opposed to the project. So basically, most of the people that didn't want the project provided written comments.
Usually when you agree, you don't then also comment about agreeing.
So,
Chuck, can I
yes.
ask a question?
Sure.
I'm curious, do you have a general sense of how people are responding to roundabouts generally? I mean, is this standard? Basically, I'm kind of wondering, are they against a roundabout here, or is it people are just against roundabouts? Do you have any sense of that?
Well, I think in this case, most of the people were for this roundabout. Typically, what we're seeing across the district is they tend to favor them, but they're usually at both ends of the spectrum. They either really like them or they really hate them. And there's not many in the middle, but in this case, we've got significantly more that favor this location. I didn't read the comments, so I don't know necessarily what the written comments were. But we're starting to see more and more people in favor of roundabouts because they're getting familiar with how they operate and how easy they are to use and what the safety benefit is of them. Because you're getting about an 80% reduction in crashes with a roundabout, and that's significant.
Thanks, that's part of what I was asking too, is whether it's been getting better, so thank you.
Yeah, I think the other part of Peter's question that I was wondering too is when you do surveys on roundabouts generally, kind of anywhere, is it about 2/3 in favor typically, or?
Like I said, the ones we've run, we just had a survey up in the town of Culpeper, and most of those came up. They were like I said, you had about the same number that were for it as were against it. So it wasn't this split like you've got here. And then I had some up in the town of Warrenton where I had one location where they were supporting it, but all the other locations they were against it. So it's not consistent. But then I have another, when we did the pipeline studies last year, last round of Smart Skill up in the town of Warrenton, we had 3 locations that were proposing roundabouts, and those were all highly supported. But again, there's not a lot in the middle. It's usually at the ends. They're either really supporting or they're really against it. So this one is, and when we get to the ones at the interchange, we can see the difference. But this one, I'm really surprised that we got this much support, because typically they are split more. For the access management portion, again, that one was pretty well supported too, 56% in favor of it. Again, we still have a lot of negatives regarding, but it's a low number of 223 written comments versus 800 responses for the whole survey. So it's significantly lower number of people actually providing written comments. Next. Okay, this is the interchange. I will show you the data for each of the roundabouts, but basically we're looking at roundabouts at both interchanges and also a shared use path that runs through the roundabout. By using roundabouts, it actually allows us to reduce the section underneath the bridge from 4-lane to a 3-lane. And allows from the space to put the shared use path under there, because there's not as much volume on that eastbound direction. And it's also not as impacted at the roundabout because you don't have a lot of people making U-turns on the eastern side. Next. And this is how this, yes.
Did you have a sense of the difference between the eastbound and westbound numbers or ratio?
The eastbound, if you look at how it operates, you've got people coming from Georgetown. Most of those people are going on to 250 bypass in the morning. The return trip is coming down the northbound ramp and making the left-hand turn to go westbound. So that's why you're seeing the disparity in the volumes.
Okay. So it's mostly peak load.
It's basically because that's how we review these. We analyze them based on the peak volumes in the morning and the peak volumes in the PM, and then we massage them to give us the optimum solution without creating these big roundabouts. I will say on these, the concepts are a little bit deceptive. There's gonna be significant right-of-way impacts with these, especially on the west side. The one quadrant has that's where the retaining wall is, and we're probably gonna take that, we will take that retaining wall down, and we will probably impact that first property. We may impact the second property, to build this. Also, we haven't actually done some of the, performance metrics on this to check fastest path and some of those metrics, which we'll do when we refine them before the smart scale application in August. So that's just to let you know that these are just for initial impact on the concept versus what the total impacts of the project's going to be. The other thing it's not showing, there's currently sidewalk on the north side, which isn't shown on this. We're going to retain that sidewalk all the way on the corridor because it runs the full length of the corridor. So we will include the sidewalk on the north side, which is currently there now.
Ready for next slide?
Yeah.
Let's get ahead, keep going back.
Again, these were supported not quite as well as Georgetown with 51% for the west side one and 55% for the east roundabout. But again, you've got a lot of negative comments, but it's only the people that are basically against the project for the most part. This is another thing that's scored fairly well. We don't necessarily need it with this application, but it was one of the things that was ranked really high in the public feedback. So we wanted to include it. Currently, the queue backs out onto the bypass in the PM, and this would resolve that issue. But the roundabouts will resolve that issue also, so we don't necessarily have to provide this as part of the package of improvements.
And it's just as commentary, that's one piece of feedback that MPO Tech gave, that
Yes.
if this element is actually not helping with the operations, perhaps removing it can help with the benefit cost analysis that goes into it. Because if you're adding this significant cost, but it's not providing benefits to the operations, perhaps it's unnecessary.
Correct. And we can come back and put that in if we start to see the queuing start to back up again. But I'm hoping that the roundabouts analysis is not showing that that's going to be a factor. So in the design year, so I think we should be all right. And this scored really well. Like I said, this was 62% were supportive of it. So that's why I kept it in. And there was some negative, but not as much as we've been seeing with the roundabouts. Any questions about this one? The next portion is basically extending the shared use path from the interchange into the city. They currently have 2 projects at Emmett and Barracks where they're running shared use path along Emmett Street from the south up to the intersection, and then they're running shared use path east on Barracks up the hill. So this will basically connect with what they're already proposing to do. And this was well supported too. We had 75% for the portion that basically runs out to the Ravenna Trail, and then the Ravenna Trail to the Emmett Street, it was 72%. But even here, we do have some negative comments, but they're not very many. And that's pretty much it. For the applications, we're looking at 3. The MPO is going to submit, the county is going to submit the western portion, and the MPO is going to submit the eastern portion, the interchange and the shared use path, and also the entire package as a separate application for smart scale this round. So we're working with them to put those applications together. I'm working with a consultant to refine a lot of that material. We have to do a interchange modification report, and we're in the process of working on that right now. We've got the framework document that we're getting signed, and then we'll be compiling the information for the report. But we need the framework document as part of the pre-application, which is due April 1st. So Any questions about this?
Yeah, I have a question, Chuck, is, on the, slide with the two roundabouts, would it be feasible for the shared use path to go underneath the two ramps instead of being at grade? It's sort of awkward the way it is there. You've got right angle turns, which are difficult for bicycles, plus you've got all the traffic on the ramps moving fairly quickly, which doesn't bode well for grade crossings. Would it be possible to take those shared use path underneath the two ramps instead of at grade?
What possible? And yes and no. I mean, a lot of things are possible, feasible, possibly, probably not, because we're trying to get these funded, and adding culverts or some sort of structure to allow for the shared use path underneath those ramps might be infeasible to actually fund the project. When we're basically addressing some of the congestion and safety issues at this location, there are some, but they're not tremendous. So I want to try to make sure that the project's going to be as cost effective as possible.
Okay, one other question, if the west portion from the interchange to Georgetown Road is completed, you almost have to do at least one of the roundabouts at the interchange so that the traffic that comes out of the side streets and can no longer cross the median has a way to make U-turns, right?
Yes, and we don't want to make the U-turn at the interchange. We'll have to have that discussion about how we're going to do that moving forward, because we're splitting up the projects, but we haven't had that discussion yet.
Are you talking about people that live south of Barracks?
Well, yeah, I'm just saying.
I mean, they could go down and make a U-turn further to the east or take a different route, but you're right. If they do that, it really makes it difficult for them to, if you're coming down Georgetown and you want to access those properties on the north side, you can't do that. On the south side, you can get back to the roundabout because you've got a good network of streets.
Right, okay. But yeah, the north side, you're kind of out of luck, though.
Yeah, I mean, those two of the streets do go up there, and there is some interconnection. It's just not as easy as it is on the south side.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Chuck?
I actually had a follow-up about where the shared use path crosses the two ramps. Yeah, like what is the mechanism for allowing those shared, like the bikes to cross the road there? Will there be like
We'll
time?
put in at both of those locations, would be putting in some sort of like probably rapid flashing beacons at this point. I know at the one at Georgetown Road, we had a big discussions about those at the MPO Tech, and they were asking about raised crosswalks and rapid flashing beacons on those two. They've changed the requirements for roundabouts, so they're more stringent than they used to be. So we're going to be looking at all those and making a determination, but at a minimum, we'll have rapid flashing beacons at those crossings.
Okay.
Chuck, I know this may be more detail than you are ready for, but what about the transit that runs up that corridor right now? I'm pretty sure the bus stops there are just what the bus stops most of our area are. There's a sign there. There's not a pullout or anything. How is that being addressed?
We weren't adding pullouts. If there's signs there, we'll maintain them. We haven't really gotten any feedback from the CAT on what they wanted to do, if they wanted to provide anything regarding those stops or anything within the project. I mean, typically we can add stuff, but we didn't get any feedback from them to add stuff, so I don't know.
Can you say anything about the right-of-way impacts on that south side?
On
You
the south,
talked about how close the road already is to the homes
Yeah.
on that south
Right now-
side and any additional. Could you
yeah,
just
we
speak
had
to
a lot of
that?
discussions at MPO Tech about possibly how we can do, because they even asked about a mid-block crossing and some other stuff, which we can't do because the speed limit's 45 miles an hour. So, on the corridor, it may be something we could phase in if we get these projects. Once these projects are in, we could come out and do a speed study of the corridor, and then at that point we could justify putting it in possibly putting in a mid-block crossing. But there is right-of-way impact, especially on the south side. Some of those houses are less than 15 feet from the road. And they're also, the grade from the road is much higher than the houses, so they set down. So if we have to get any right of way on that side, it's going to impact basically those houses might be total takes. So we're trying to minimize that as much as possible. That's why we're shifting everything to the north. I know the house on the corner at the interchange is going to be impacted. I actually have talked to the couple that lives there. And we've had several projects that we've looked at for that. Even one of the alternatives provided a right turn lane, and that's would impact that property also. So we don't have a lot of solutions that do not impact that property. Or we don't have any that won't impact it. So there are significant right-of-way impacts, but we're trying to keep them limited as to at the intersections where possible. I will say for the roundabout, like I said, we're going to impact all basically the right of way in all four quadrants to actually build those and put in the shared use path and the sidewalks and all that stuff. It's just part of what we're going to have to do to actually make it work. But hopefully we can do other things on the corridor to lessen the impacts overall. And it'll provide good operations now and well into the future, all the way through the 2045 design year.
All right, we want to move on to the I-64 and Fifth Street interchange.
Great. The next one I have is just the slides that are the projects that the MPO is going to submit. You can go down a couple of slides once you start the presentation. Okay, they're submitting 4 applications, like I said before. This is the first one. This is the diversion diamond that we're recommending. Right now, we're getting ready to go out for public survey on this one. We've got the survey built. We're putting together the web page and uploading the material to that. And once that's done, we'll be pushing it probably next week to get public input. We've got 4 alternatives: a no build, minimum build with basically just improve some of the ramps on the adding turn lanes on the westbound or southbound to westbound on ramp and the eastbound to or northbound to eastbound on ramp, and widen the off ramp off of 64 in the eastbound direction. But the other thing it would be to widen the shift some of the structure around on top of the bridge to provide 6-foot sidewalks on both sides. Currently, there's you've got a median with left turn lanes and a 6-foot sidewalk on one side and 2 or 3 foot curb on the other side. So what we're going to do is shift everything over so we can get the sidewalk on both sides for the non-DDI alternatives. We also are looking at a SPUI, but a SPUI, which is a single point urban diamond interchange. They're popular. They work very well, but they're real expensive. And in this case, we'd have to replace the entire structure. With this one, with the divert DDI, we're looking to preserve the structure by moving the travel lanes to the outside. You don't need the left turn lanes at the ramp terminals like you do for traditional diamond. So that gives us room to run the shared use path down the middle of the bridge across the interchange. And so we can accommodate the plans for the county to put the shared use path along this corridor. And we're going to extend the shared use path north to the Holiday Inn entrance and south around to Pinecrest. Whereas there's already a sidewalk there now, and there's a proposal to extend the shared use path up to that point. And this provides good levels of service. It addresses all of our impacts. It reduces the crashes because you're reducing the number of conflicting movements to just 2 for the most part at the crossover intersections. They work very well. We were really successful with the one we did in Zion's Crossroads. And I think the one at exit 124, 250 is actually becoming very well used and popular also. So any questions about this one?
No, that's not.
All right. The next projects that the counties or the MPO is going to submit are the Rolkin Road and Peter Jefferson Parkway intersection projects. These were submitted last round in Smart Scale, and they did really well. Actually, Peter Jefferson Parkway was one of the recommended projects to be funded, and the CTB they switched the funding for that one over to District Avenue because they felt that was more of a critical need than the other one was here. But basically, this is the concept that we used last round. We're providing crosswalks at Rolkin Road, and we're adding a sidewalk on the south side of 250 from Rolkin down to State Farm Boulevard. And the next slide is the other portion. This is Peter Jefferson Parkway. What we're going to do is we're going to close the one crossover just to the west that provides one of the accesses to the Holiday Inn and the businesses over here and make it a right in, right out to improve the safety. We're adding a right turn lane at Rolkin on the eastbound direction, and we're converting the intersection to a through cut, which basically allows the left turns in and the left turns out, but it doesn't allow the through movement across between Peter Jefferson Parkway and Glen Orkey. We're also adding a park and ride lot for 50 space park and ride lot with the bus loop, which would allow for commuter buses to come in, pick up people and go out and either go to the interstate or go back towards Charlottesville. That's it for this one. Any questions?
No, it's not.
All right. And like we already talked about Barracks Road, that's this, the last 2 other applications are the Barracks Road applications. So that's the 4 applications that the MPO is going to be submitting this round. This one is just the interchange improvements and the stuff to the east, which is the shared use path all the way to Emmett Street.
Any questions or comments on any of the 4 projects?
No, I think we're good.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all.
Well, thank you, Tom.
Let us know if you have any questions.
All right.
Thanks, Chuck.
Okay, I guess we'll move on to the Unified Planning Work Program. Christine.
Yes. I have the pleasure of explaining the UPWP, as we call it. I think a lot of you are familiar with this, but I'm going to go ahead and do high level just to orient us, to make sure we're all on the same page. So we have to submit an annual Unified Planning and Work Program. It's a draft of all the activities that the MPO will do throughout the fiscal year. It is presented to MPO Tech and CTAC and the MPO Policy Board. Policy Board saw it in its draft form first so that they could provide direction. Then we bring it to you all and to MPO Tech to get feedback, and then it goes back to the Policy Board for a final vote in April. It needs to be submitted to the feds by early in May. Oh, that's weird. Hang on a second, sorry. In advance of the I might keep it just in this view, which isn't ideal, but we can all see it, right? There we go. Purpose of the WP is to identify all of the transportation planning activities that the MPO staff will do. Federal law does require that we address 8 basic components that are listed here. Don't need to read those to you. That's standard across all MPO and TPO, transportation planning organizations. But additionally, the CAMPO had identified over time other priorities that they wanted to make sure that they were also considering in their planning processes. And that's related to things like enhanced transit, greater mobility for seniors and folks with disabilities, things like that, is really expanding upon those 8 core needs and getting a little bit more regionalized and local to what are, what does our community want and what kind of planning activities should we undergo that still meet the federal requirements. The funding that we
ask, are there any, I didn't see, is there equity in there in any shape or form, either by what we all have to do or what the CAMPO does? I heard you mention seniors and disabilities, but there's obviously more to it than that.
No, I don't know that equity was specifically called out when they identified these additional priorities. I mean, certainly like the type 6 requirements and all of that, we're still required to follow, but I don't think there were additional ones. And really, the way we should be looking at transportation planning, that should always be the priority, right?
I would hope so, but sometimes if it's not stated,
Stated
particularly in
explicitly.
this world right now, where the
Yeah.
pushback against DEI and equity work is rampant and powerful and effective and organized and scary. Sometimes it helps actually put stuff in there. So I don't sidetrack too much, but is this reviewed, so the MPO?
Well, the long-range transportation plan will have those priorities set in the long-range transportation plan, but these have been ongoing. So that's certainly something we should look at readdressing and saying, do these continue to be the additional priorities, or do they want to be revisited? They have not been revisited in the last 2 or 3
requests
reports.
suggested or under.
Then I've-
Conversations for. That's a separate agenda item, or I can generally see nodding heads that
Yeah.
people would like to see that. I'm sorry to sidetrack you.
No, not sidetracked. That's a great comment. The funding that the MPO receives is from 2 federal agencies. The first one is FHWA, Federal Highways Administration, and that is administered through VDOT. And then we also receive Federal Transit Administration funding, and that is administered through DRPT. All of our funding is at an 80-10-10 split, 80% federal, 10% state, 10% local match. We get that local match from our local governments through their per capita membership dues that they pay to the TJPDC. Additionally, VDOT receives state planning funds from FHWA. We call those SPR funds, state planning and research. Those are not funds that actually come through the TJPDC or the MPO. They go directly to VDOT, but are to support the planning efforts within the district. Sorry. This is going to be really tiny on that screen, but I believe, I can't remember if this was in the packet or not. I think it was sent out, and if not, we can send any of these presentations after the fact to the Zoom. So here is a snapshot of all the funding that we're going to receive with all of these acronyms. So the very top row is our FHWA funding for FY25. The next row down, you'll see is FY23 passive rollover. FHWA does allow MPOs to roll over money from year to year in 2 different ways, whether it's active, which means you explicitly state, we want to take this much money from this annual funding and put it into next year, or passive rollover, which is anything that is not spent, automatically rolls over 2 years after the fact. So we do have some passive rollover that we did not spend that'll add to our total funding. We then also have FTA DRPT funding. Right now, that's a planning amount that they're giving us, but it has not yet been confirmed by FTA. So that could change between now and the April adoption. You'll see the total line in yellow at the bottom. That is the total amount of funding for us to program, just over $453,000. These are going to get much smaller as we go, because there's a lot more detail as I go. So basically, we split the tasks into 3 different items. The first one is administration, and that's for the standard items that occur year to year, staffing committees, making sure we're reporting on all of our compliance, all of our reporting, invoicing, things like that, general information sharing, updates, websites, that type of stuff.
This year is slightly higher than last year, and that is primarily due to staff transitions that we're gonna have and cross-training that we're gonna be doing to make sure that we have multiple staff members that understand all of the processes of the committees rather than just one, so that when we have a turnover, we have to then retrain up, which happens at all MPOs. The second task is the long-range planning. The major buckets within this for this upcoming fiscal year will be to support the comprehensive safety action plan. There's $50,000 allocated to that. That's particularly to support Charlottesville and Albemarle and to help them identify projects for implementation to be able to apply for Safe Streets and Roads for All implementation funding. The second line item there is travel demand management study. This is at direction of the policy board. Through a lot of the long-range transportation plan, we heard a lot about reducing cars in the urban area and having strategies long-term for how we are going to get a more walkable, bikeable community and how we are going to do things like road diets, but we have to do something with those coming in from outside of the urban area. So this would be the beginnings of a study. That amount certainly would not be enough to complete it, but it's something we can launch within a year and then program additional funding into the next year. That one would probably, not definitely, depending on our hires, but could potentially be a consultant supported study. The next one is funding to support the ongoing work towards a regional transit authority. We do receive a little bit of money from the City of Charlottesville and Albemarle County to staff the regional transit partnership. But there is a lot of momentum to continuing to seek an authority and potentially additional revenue from the state level to support that. So that will staff that. Travel demand model update that's required. We are at the point where that needs to occur. And then the next one is, this one is interesting, it's pedestrian navigation of innovative intersections. A lot of times in all of these transportation planning processes, all of the innovative intersections, the most questions, comments, and feedback are about how will pedestrians and bicyclists navigate this. And so this would be a resource guide, looking at all of the research that's already out there, looking at all of the best practices, making sure that we as staff understand all of the FHWA and FTA requirements for these. This would likely be a standalone research project with a resource guide that comes out of it. And then the last one is on-call services and contingency. That is to continue to develop an on-call consulting program that our local governments could use for professional services. And then contingency is setting some funding aside in case something comes up that we just want to make sure that there's funding there for us to do that the policy board directs. And then the third major task is short range planning. Scroll too far. And those are all of the requirements. So that's maintaining the transportation improvement program, that's smart scale developments and grant applications, regional transit partnership, TDM, and bike PED support. A lot of times we'll get calls from our local governments to support their initiatives that would fall in that bucket, developing the required performance targets, CTAC public outreach, and Title VI. So those things are standard year over year within the UPW. Any questions? And then I am not going to go through this in any great level of detail, but I then broke it down by individual task, by funding source, in case you were very curious, just to be as transparent as possible of how we intend to spend that $400 and some thousand as staff in the next year. That's task 1, task 2, and task 3. And then finally, the next steps for the UPWP. A draft, as I told you, was already presented to the policy board. It's coming to you all in MPO Tech. A final draft will be delivered to you all in April. You have the draft already, so if you have any feedback on that draft, whether it's the narrative, the descriptions of activities, the funding sources, we're happy to receive those. But then we do ask in April that both MPO Tech and CTAC make a recommendation to the policy board to approve that UPWP plan. It'll be approved hopefully by them in April and submitted in early May to our funders. Any questions?
I have a comment. I'm happy to see that the safety, I'm happy to hear that you've taken a lot of feedback from people who want to close down streets to cars and limit car use. Something that, having been on this committee for about a year now, something that's been tough for me, honestly, is that I think a lot of the things that we look at, smart scale, long range transportation plan, nothing is really baked in to incorporate that visionary approach, in my opinion, to transforming our networks away from car use. It's like adding things and making things and transforming roads to make it safer. However, it's not thinking about, okay, closing streets. If we close these streets, we have to develop these streets in other particular ways. Which I think a lot of folks who you've heard feedback from in regards to cars, kind of think along those lines. I'm not sure, I guess that's kind of a general comment. I'd like to be more visionary about that. I mean, it's, in particular, it's not just a safety issue, but it's gonna make the biggest impact on climate change. So the more we force people, essentially, and it's forcing, but really we change habits to get people on the bus and get people walking and on bikes, the bigger impact we're actually going to have overall, and something that we actually need to do as a society. And yeah, I guess that's it. It's like I haven't been seeing much of that, and I'd like to see more of it.
I would second that also, as a city resident, somebody who does primarily like get about town on bike and by foot, then it would be nice to see more visionary planning about how we can move forward with like street diets and everything.
I can feedback on that. So I build transportation planning software. I've got planning tools running all over the country now. And typically bike and ped is a measure, 1 of 20, but it's never a measure that is heavily weighted. And it's also very community focused. On like Texas, we have a tool running in Texas. They have an 8,000-mile bicycle trail system, or BTT, that they put together. And so we built them a tool, and the whole purpose of the tool is to take their STIP projects and figure out which of these projects would possibly touch this network so we could make some type of improvement. And typically those are like probably pretty small. But like bike and ped stuff, it's an input, but it's never, or it seems like it's never a significant one.
I don't want to sidetrack this too much, but I support what you're saying very much, and big interest I hear from people is how we just design roads for cars to drive fast. And so still adding a sidewalk and a bike lane doesn't affect the issue that cars drive too fast in America, very much in our community. That to me is one of the scariest things. So where does that live? Does that live at all in this, being a new CTAC, and knowing that there are a lot of players in transportation planning? Is that something that this group at least could dig into and comment on more?
Where does what live? Say what you mean, more about that.
More of not working around the margins, but actually affecting significant change and being thoughtful. In my sense, and I don't mean to pick on anybody, particularly our VDOT employees here, but my sense is that the VDOT is mandated by US DOT, and their main role is to get cars far fast and in long distances, which they do very well. You can get a long distance really quickly in America, and not a whole lot else is really prioritized, which is what we're also hearing. So, where does that live in the planning process? If we want to fundamentally slow cars down and make bike ped not just an add-on to a road, but more of the focus. Does that make some sense? And does that align with what the others have said?
I mean, it lives in getting feedback from places like CTAC and MPO Tech and the policy board to direct that level of planning. You know, I think, and I can't speak for Chuck, and I'm not gonna put Chuck on the spot. You know, and I'm not a transportation planner, so I'm gonna be very transparent about that. I was hired here not to do transportation planning. But it's certainly a common theme throughout the feedback we hear, and it's actually a common theme in a lot of the discussions we do have with VDOT, is making sure we are accommodating multimodal. You know, in a lot of places, it's easy to say we can close this road and make it like pet friendly. In a lot of places, we still have to accommodate a lot of vehicles coming in from outside of the city. And so there have to be strategies for what are we doing if we don't want those vehicles on small urban streets, what are we doing with them instead? You know, and are we creating a robust regional transit system? Are we doing a robust, you know, park and ride? Are we doing robust, you know, parking outside of the urban area and then getting people on transit? So that's part of what we want to look at with this, is looking at what are transportation demands management that we could be doing. I don't have a good answer for you though.
Yeah,
That's,
sure.
you know, that's not my background.
But I would love to think that this is a group that can be the kind of thing that, as I read it and I heard the person who suggested I apply for this position, it's about getting constituent feedback to the policymakers. And because I'm not a transportation expert either, I'm learning a lot, I put a lot more time into it, I figure maybe I'm at step 2 out of 2,000 now, instead of step 1. But I do know a lot of people and I hear a lot of feedback, and I want to bring that to the table, and I really very much support that kind of thinking. And, you know, I mean, I'm a non-voting member of the Regional Transit Partnership right now. And, you know, when we talk about a big transit plan or a maybe more realistic transit plan, I'm like, what the hell? What do you mean more realistic? I mean, if this is the need, you know, let's go advocate for it. So I know it's easier said than done, there's a lot of needs in the community, but that's why I'm putting more of my time into this kind of stuff, is to hopefully affect that kind of change.
I think the grassroots demand is there, but the money isn't there, right? The money isn't adding 6 lanes to 66, so 40,000 more Teslas can go up and down.
Yeah.
But if you can figure out a way to put this money in like ahead, then that's where you get it.
And it's a choice, we do have choices, you know, and until I start getting off my soapbox, I'll still try and stay.
Well, that kind of thing speaks to what, you know, Lee was saying about, why don't you just, on those 2 roundabouts, you know, well, we can't do it because, you know, it's a money thing, and that's how smart scale, you know, works, and yeah, it is something we're up against.
So we need to advocate at the city and county level to get more state dollars, more transportation, so there's more money in smart scale.
And I will say, we do get a lot of money with the omnibus bill, and that's basically a tax on gas. We get a large portion of it because our interstate segments through the district are smaller, so we get a significant amount of money in the smart scale pool to fund projects with. This last round, between round 5 and round 6 of smart scale, they made some significant changes to that. How we're scoring applications that make it more difficult for bike ped projects to get funded. Because they took out land use used to be a factor area. It still is a factor area, but it used to be standalone. Now it's just a multiplier to the other factor areas. So over the last 5 rounds, I've seen significant a lot of projects, bike ped projects, that were funded solely with land use as part of their score. So yeah, we do look at bike and pedestrian facilities, not as much as we do for, I typically don't look at congestion at all. I focus solely on safety, whether it's pedestrian or vehicle. I look at the PSI, the potential for safety improvement data every year. We look at it pretty intensely and identify the areas where we're seeing the most crashes. And we come up with multimodal solutions to address those locations. I don't think we'll ever get more capacity projects, at least in this area, just because we don't have the capacity issues that they have in Northern Virginia or some of that larger urban areas that where the commuter population is crazy. We don't have that here. We do have commuters, and I agree that we need to figure out how we're going to deal with those. I've been working with the MPO for 20 years in my current position. So I've seen a lot of emphasis on trying to look at how we can solve the problem. But there has to be some mechanism that's going to basically tell people they need to park outside. It's to where they don't want to drive their car in. And there's not really been a consensus on how to do that. So I don't know what the answer is to that, and that's something that we've looked at park and ride lots. I mean, some of the previous board members wanted to analyze that, so we have that capability to do that. It's just that we haven't got a lot of guidance on how to go about what they want to do. We did propose a park and ride lot out on the east end at Pantops, and that will allow for commuters to actually park there and get on the bus and ride into town. We have looked at some of those in other areas, but there's not been a real push to support those kind of projects. So any guidance you could provide the policy board in that direction would be, I think, appreciated. When I started in this with VDOT, bike and pedestrians were still a amenity that the localities had to pay for if they wanted to include it in a project. So I've been around for a long time. I've seen the changes that come about, and we basically, and I promote pedestrian and bicyclist accommodations on every project, more so than just accommodations, which is what the current regulations state. So we want to try to get facilities in there, because we don't get them in there, there's less likely that people are going to start to use them. And I can't build enough improvements to address the vehicle constraints. I think we definitely need to promote bike and pedestrian accommodations as much as possible, because those are to give people alternatives as to how they want to commute around the area. And it's just more support at the board level, the more those will likely to advance. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. But just to give you VDOT's perspective on this from a planning perspective, there's not a lot of tools for doing the analysis, and we still promote them as much as possible using GIS to identify where the gaps are. And we talk about it with the bike and pedestrian groups to try to promote those projects. We've looked at a couple. The Ravenna Bridge was one of them. The shared use path that we were proposing on Route 20 South. We got Avon Street funded last round in the city and the county. We submitted the road diet south of Old Lynchburg Road on Fifth Street last round. It just didn't get funded because there's not enough benefit that shows up in the scoring methodology for Smart Scale. So, I mean, we are going after, we got the trail projects funded for the, there at Fifth Street Station, the Biscuit Run Trail connection from the new shopping center up to Wegmans and over to Fifth Street Station Parkway. So we are pursuing them, and we're trying to get them move forward and into the process as much as possible. I mean, I had several projects across the district funded for shared use paths last round. So, and we're submitting more from the various localities every round. So we are promoting them, and we are definitely supportive of them.
It seems like regional transit would be a really good way to increase that, to like have more buses and things coming from Crozet, from Ruckersville to here. And I don't know if this is part of what we're looking at now. You're giving me like a big look.
Yes, TJPDC last year
completed regional transit vision plan.
Mhm.
This year, the regional transit governance study,
Yeah.
and then RTP directed staff to, within the next 4 months, bring forth
Yeah, do all
a
the rest of it.
lot.
I mean, if there was regular buses to Richmond.
Yeah, it's really gonna be about funding.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's consensus around the desire. I think it's about bringing in the amount of revenue that would be required to hit that vision plan, the constrained or the unconstrained vision.
I've said this to other, I just think the time is now though, because it's come, you know, when the Blue Earth Health District's public health priorities include better public transit. Because of the need to be able to get healthy, not just your doctors, but recreation opportunities and different things like that. And that if you don't have good, it's not, you know, that it's a public safety problem. You know, from the environmental standpoint, which is very strong in this community, there's so many different areas where it keeps popping up. And I'm involved in the aging community and, you know, out of 8 dimensions of aging, we picked transportation as one of the 3 biggest issues to focus on because that's what we heard informally and from our surveys. It's everywhere you look, it's come up. So I just feel like the iron's hot. We need to try to use it. Yeah, I'm not sure where I was going with that. And there's consensus and a good opportunity where we're trying to do it. And just, I know it's easier said than done. I just think there's a lot of public will. There's a lot more public will than sometimes we give.
All right, well, with that, we're pretty much ready to wrap here. Guess any additional comments?
Just add as a staff update, staff did submit raise grant, just over 3.3 million for the Riviera Bike Ped Bridge to preliminary engineering. That has been submitted.
All right, and I should mention about the next meeting here. Ordinarily, our meetings are on the odd months of the year. However, because of the necessity of reviewing the long-range transportation plan, we need to meet in April instead of May, and I think it will be instead of. That we won't then have a May meeting, so the next time we'll meet, then actually would be July. So,
That would be April 17th then.
So it's to May 15.
yeah, it's generally the third Wednesday, so that should be it.
Yes, there was a.
Okay, all right. And with that, I guess we are adjourned. Okay. Thanks, Lee.
Yeah, it's a small town.
There's another one, say,
In a good way.
10 miles.
It's not so small. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And the service combined.
Yeah. I heard I came back. Oh. A long time ago. There was some of the jokes. Yeah, I think you simply have to. Yeah.